Welcome to the Retro Network Podcast, the flagship show for the Retro Network Podcast channel. Get ready for the latest pop culture news, interviews, and topical discussions on all that stuff we grew up with and just can't leave in the past. And now, here are your hosts for the Retro Network Podcast, Jason and Mickey.
That is right. The gang is all here. Well, I guess I don't know if two people are considered a gang, but you've got Jason and Mickey. How are you, Mick? How was your week?
I'm good. The week was good. And yes, we are a gang because when you're as good as we are at what we do, it seems like there's more people involved. So we'll take credit as being a gang.
Well, we do have an extended gang, I guess you'll say, but not for this podcast. We're the two masterminds. Can you have more than one mastermind? I don't know.
We'll say sure.
Okay. I'm glad you're having a good week for once. Last couple of weeks, I made it through, and I'm glad you've been having a good one this time.
Well, it's just, I'm always so busy. Tiny, who listens to the show, tells me that I'm the busiest man he knows, and I would probably have to agree with that. But I'm not the only one who's been busy. You texted me last night and told me to go check out some pictures, and you didn't even tell me this was going on, and I'm a old school racing fan. So what were you doing filming footage from the pace truck at a racetrack last night?
Well, one of the perks from my company is they sponsor the Montgomery Speedway, and we print all their banners and stuff like that for them, programs, and I don't know what all we do for them, but we're an official sponsor, so once a year we get the VIP suite. And then they give us the opportunity, if we want to ride in the pace truck for a race. So last night, there was two races. One was 50 laps, and one was 125 laps. And we had done this once before, like a couple years ago, and we took one of the ones that was just like 25 or 50 laps. And it was fun. But we went on the big one last night at 125. And so it's interesting because, there can be a lot of action. If there's not, you're kind of stuck in the truck right there on pit road for the longest time. And that was the case for a while. We went through half the race. Like we're in lap 72 or something. Nothing. They're all like single file, and me and my boys are in the back seat, and I'm up front there with the driver. And so we're sitting there. And he's like, don't worry, there's going to be a crash right here, right? Like right in front of us in turn one. About the time I said that, or I think I put over on Facebook, where's all the wrecks at? And boom. Mm-hmm. And then from it took forever to get to lap 80. I mean, it was like 5 cautions like in a row. So we just kept doing laps, and it was still fun, man. It was awesome.
I watched some of your videos that you had on Facebook, and the one where it's like, I think it looks like you come back on the pit road, and at the restart, there's a wreck right in front of you.
Yes.
Your video. So, here we go again.
Yeah. It's nuts. Like, so, the pace car, he's usually about 35 miles an hour. And that last lap before they get started, he'll get back up to about 45. But on that backstretch, he'll gun it. We'll get up to like 55, 60. And then make that huge sharp turn into pit lane at like 50 miles an hour. It feels like the truck is going to flip over. You're like hanging on for your dear life. And then the cars go zooming by. It's some fun, man. I'm really appreciative that the company does that and gives us that little perk every year.
Well, back in the 90s, I got to turn some laps at Bristol with Mr. Excitement, Jimmy Spencer.
Oh, nice.
And they've changed Bristol track just a little bit in the last few years, but this is when it still had the concrete surface. And we're going around there. I don't really know how fast we're going. It feels really fast. And he's talking to me in the headset, and this was a special car they had for this type of thing where it had a passenger seat. And I've got my window my arm up on the window. This is when we're starting to get going. Mm-hmm. And we're just cruising around. I'd say probably half speed. And he says, you're going to want to put your arm inside. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to drop the hammer. He started turning full speed qualifying laps.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know which way was up. And I told him because it's like you'd come out of the turn, it felt like you dropped 20, 30 feet and bottomed out. And then we're at such short straightaways, it's like you was climbing back up again. So it was constantly up and down and around. And we got done. I told him, said, I don't know how there's not a wreck every 5 seconds, because I couldn't tell where we were at any point when we were going around at full speed. And he said, well, if you were out there with 40 other cars doing the same speed, it's like you're driving down the interstate doing 65, because you're all relative with each other. And I was like, oh, well, if you say so. But this coming from the man that caused more wrecks in his years in NASCAR than any other driver. So.
Right. Oh, man. I used to watch NASCAR back in the day with my dad. Dad wasn't really into a lot of major sports, football, baseball, basketball. But we would watch some racing back in the day. So it's fun. The boys love it. They're obviously into cars. They're that age, and my oldest can't wait to get behind the wheel of one. So get that little thrill of being on the track and watching those cars was fun, even though it's a smaller type setting than NASCAR.
Yeah. Don't get me started on old NASCAR from the late 80s and all through the early 90s, because I could go on and on and on. So,
who are you a fan of?
Oh, man, I loved Harry Gant. I love Morgan Shepherd. Yeah, I love Morgan Shepherd. I loved Ernie Irvin because he drove the Kodak car, Morgan McCoy Racing, which was headquartered 5 miles from my house. And we were over there a lot. But by far and away, Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator, was my all-time favorite. And that's when he had his accident and died at Daytona that year. We went to Bristol race in the spring, like always. They used to have season tickets. And I went and signed his trailer that people were signing. And we left. We didn't even watch the race, and I've not been back to a race since.
Yeah.
You know, he was kind of like the last one left at that point of all my favorites, and him especially being my favorite. I just lost interest in it at that point.
Yeah. I was basically the same thing happened to me. I was a huge Dale Earnhardt fan. My dad was a huge Darrell Waltrip fan. And those were our two drivers we watch every race. And I remember when that happened, I came home. I had not watched the race that day for some reason. I came home and I did catch like the tail end of Daytona and watched it all go down. And I was like, man, because I hadn't really, Daytona is the only one I will try to watch each year. And I don't really follow throughout the season anymore since, Dad and I, we are 1,000 miles away from each other, so we can't really watch racing together. But yeah, it had that same kind of feeling, like the whole air had been left out of that NASCAR balloon, and that was it. Yeah. Very strange.
Yeah, I really I miss having that to do on Sunday afternoons, but I've tried watching it since then, and it's not the same. But for you and maybe your dad and people listening who are like us, who like the old NASCAR, they have most of the old races from the 90s on YouTube, full length.
Oh, wow.
And they cut out the commercials. So a couple years ago, I started, and I'd pick a year like 1989, then 1990. And on Sunday afternoons, well, I ain't going to say it's the full race. It's cut down to like an hour and 40-minute video. But I was just watching week to week, whatever races were, I would look back at the schedule and say, okay, the week of February 14th, they were at Daytona. That's when I'm watching the Daytona race from that year. And I just watched the whole season. And so people can go out and still find some of that good NASCAR if they want to.
Yeah. And that's part of it too. Like I said, I remember the sponsors of all the drivers back then because they never changed.
Yeah.
And now it's like from season to season, the sponsors change so much. And it's hard to follow. It's hard to be a fan of a driver or even a fan of a car just because the paint scheme changes and everything changes from year to year. And it's just a different era.
Well, it's hard to support them financially because you'll buy a Dale Earnhardt T-shirt in black and white, and the next year he's driving yellow and red, and you're like, well, crap, I got to go buy another T-shirt. I can't afford this.
It's a scheme. It's a scheme. Anyway, well, that was fun doing that last night. It was a nice little detox from the whole week that I had, which was school orientation, getting back into the school schedule. And I had high school orientation and kindergarten orientation back to back.
Well, when
Monday and Tuesday nights.
When does school start back for you guys?
August 6th, 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have thought it would have been later where you're so far south you probably don't really miss many snow days, if any.
Well, and this is the earliest that I've recalled that they've started down here, but they've extended breaks now. They get a full week at Thanksgiving. They get like 2 weeks at Christmas, spring break. There's other little holidays kind of sprinkled in between as well. So they get like 2 months summer vacation. That's it. I was like, man, I feel bad for them.
Yeah, but they get those extended breaks you're talking about during the year that I didn't get anyway. So.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. But man, I put out there on Facebook to my friends and family, is it okay to schedule my midlife crisis, or do I just have to wait and let it come? Because that going from high school to kindergarten back to back this week was pretty rough.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, we made it through the week, and here we are, and we've got some great stuff to talk about in this episode. I wanted to first throw out a couple announcements to everybody. I wanted to make sure everybody knew about our new giveaway that we've got going on, and we've been teasing it, the last couple podcasts, and it's finally here. It's finally active. And the giveaway is digital copies of Fast and Furious 1 through 7. All you got to do is there's a pinned tweet out there. If you want to go over there, I'm going to put the link actually in our show notes here. So you can just click on that Rafflecopter link and go out, and you can get 11 entries right now if you click on that. And it's just a matter of connecting with our social media accounts. And if you go over to the show notes on the website and leave like an extended movie pitch for those guys at Sequel Quest, we'll give you 5 entries right there.
Yeah, hold on. I'm logging in with my anonymous email account here. Hold on.
Your Hotmail. Yeah.
Yeah. Members and family members of Retro Network staff not eligible.
Yes. That was right in the rules. No, actually, I forgot to put that in the rules, but.
Oh, so that's not in the rules.
No. Anyway, so that was just a fun giveaway, trying to time it, with the new movie release. And then those guys over at Sequel Quest, they released their rewind pitch on a Fast and Furious sequel. I think one of them was on the moon or something.
Well,
really talking about. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's about the next logical step, that or racing submarine. Well, they already took down a submarine in one of the movies.
True. Yes. Yeah. So that was fun to kind of tie that all together, and we'll give you all a chance to win something. And then we've also got another announcement, actually, that you can win something in the month of August if you choose to back us over there on Patreon. I created a Patreon account for us that you can go over there and support us, and I'm going to be throwing in little promos and announcements here with more details on that. But all we want is your $2, man. $2. Mm-hmm. That's the what I'm calling the Paperboy level over there on Patreon. And you give us $2, and if we get 10 patrons a month that will sponsor us at the $2 level, I figured that would pretty much cover all of our operating expenses for the year. So, it costs a little money to get up there on Podbean and, all of our domain names and all that stuff, the website stuff that we get a hit with each year. If you'll help us out with that, then that's money that we would be spending there that we can put into maybe some Facebook advertising or Instagram or whatever we want to do to try to expand the network a little bit, get ourselves out there. And the bigger we get, the better, and probably more stories and articles and podcasts you will get. So that's kind of why we're starting the Patreon. We're going to get that up there. And as an incentive to back us, either at the $2 level or the $5 level each month, we're going to throw in a giveaway. And then whoever has backed us that month at the $2 level, you get 1 entry. At the $5 level, you get 3 entries. And we're going to give a little prize pack away each month to one of our Patreon supporters. So I've got a video. I'm going to be posting some videos over there on Patreon. It's patreon.com/The Retro Network. And this month's prize is a little Loot Crate box. And I'm throwing a bunch of other little goodies in there. So I think if you're going to sell this on the street, you're probably talking about $50 worth of stuff. So pitch in $2, you'll get a chance to take home that prize over there on Patreon.
That's like you were saying, we could do so much more than just the money we're putting into the domains and the hosting and podcasting and all that. We could spend in other places of the site to make it even more entertaining. Maybe that's a bad way to say it, but I'll go with more entertaining. we could do more stuff.
Right. And we're also going to give you some other benefits as well. We're going to open up a Slack channel for our Patreon people, so you can talk directly with all of us over there on Slack, which is what we use to communicate back and forth about articles and everything else. And then we're also going to drop some exclusive podcasts over there on Patreon. We've been kind of hinting at doing like an outtake podcast. We talked about doing maybe an extended recurrent events that we can throw over there. So we're going to be adding some bonus content just to Patreon supporters. So that'll be fun and a little bit extra as an incentive to help us out. So go over there in the month of August here and support us over there. You get in early, the better your odds are to win that giveaway, because there might only be 10 or 15 people that will support us this month. So get in early, and your odds will be better to get a chance at that giveaway. So that's a little bit about our announcements. Coming up in our main discussion, we're going to go back to our video gaming days, talk about our first consoles, Game Boys, all that stuff, how we got our video games at home and on the road back in the day. That should be fun.
Yeah, and to get pumped up for it, I texted you a picture last night. We went out to eat, and I was wearing my 1985 Nintendo T-shirt. Didn't get the first stinking comment, though. You believe that?
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, that's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to that discussion. But first, as always, let's get into our recurrent events from this past week. So first up this week, I was really excited. I got an email from this company called Big G Creative, and telling me about a new game based on the Trapper Keeper. We all had the Trapper Keeper back in the day. I loved that thing and all those crazy designs and everything you could get on those Trapper Keepers. But they've got this new card game coming out. It's going to be packaged in kind of that iconic style notebook. It's going to have a Velcro enclosure, and you'll get 3 different designs: the Rainbow Unicorn, the Palm Tree Sunset, or the Psychedelic Outer Space. You can choose from one of those designs. They're going to be exclusively at Target for $16.99. Have not seen that it's come online yet, so you're going to have to go over there to your local retail store. Mick, I guess you'll be driving for a while since you don't have a Target near you.
Well, it's about 45 minutes away.
But I'm excited that they offered to send me one to review. So as a part of, I guess, what you would call our sister website now, Rediscover the 80s, I'm going to put a review together, and of course we'll share it as well with the Retro Network. But you remember the Trapper Keeper? Did you remember which one that you had back in the day?
I had the knockoff Trapper Keeper. I never owned an authentic Trapper Keeper. I
remember having the all green one, like no design, like the plain Jane. It was green, and then it had the snap enclosure. They didn't have the Velcro. I don't remember if I had one of the other ones. God, I wanted that one that had the Lamborghini Countach on it. The blue one with the red Countach. I mean, that was like the most coveted one. But I also remember they had, back in the day, we had the folders you could put in there. And I remember having like a Miami Vice folder and some other like popular shows and properties had their own little folders you could put in the binder.
Well, you talked about yours having the snap enclosure. That sound of the Velcro ripping open was part of the appeal of that thing because everybody knew you had a trapper keeper. When the teacher said, get your homework out, and you hear somebody in the back go, oh, he's got a trapper keeper.
Oh, man. They were great.
Well, why don't they bring back trapper keepers?
Well,
is it because kids these days don't really need them with their technology at school or something? Or
I think that's probably part of it. I know there was kind of a push that they still have some available now. That's nothing like they were back in the day, but we had to buy phones for my two sons because they're using their phones in class now.
Holy moly!
Yes, so it's all electronic, man. They barely have anything to carry around now.
Well, think of the market though, because I know you would too. If trapper keepers in their original form existed today, I'd buy one and use it at work. Yeah. It would be in my office. I would be. I'd be going to the production. I'd be going to the production meeting and going.
You know what we need, dude? We need a cell phone case that looks like a trapper with the Velcro, and you wear it on your hip.
So right.
You wear it on your hip and just pull it out. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what.
Well, hey, before we move on, do you have any idea what type of card game this is? Is it like a trivia game or like a Uno game or what?
Well, if you I'll plug my website. If you go over to Rediscover the 80s, I put over there a little video of like the person going through all the basic rules and stuff. So basically what it is, I think you get like 5 little smaller Trapper Keeper folders, and so you can play up to 5 people, and then you get all these cards that are like homework assignments and permission slips and all of this and that. And as you go through the game, you're collecting these cards, putting them in your Trapper Keeper folder, and you're earning points. And then at the end of the game, everybody adds up their points to see who wins. But like, there's like a field trip, card, and then you got like your parents' permission slip, and you have to have both of them to get the points. So they've kind of thought this out. It looks really fun. So I'm excited to try it out. I
was just wondering if it was something that could be adapted to play on TRN game night or not, but it don't sound like it is.
Probably not, because you get like 9 piles of cards, and you have to like take cards off the top and put them in your little folder. You got to have that. You can't do that virtually, right. That little gimmick.
Oh, well.
Well, moving right along, speaking of video games, the Ghostbusters video game is getting a remastered version. Now, I'm talking about the one back from 2009 that was pretty well received. It had all 4 of the original Ghostbusters contributing their voices, and Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis actually helped write the script for the game. I did not know that, but I have the game. I think it was on PS2 at the time.
That sounds right.
And I've gone through it. It is a really fun game. So they're gonna remaster that and re-release it for Nintendo Switch, PC, PS4, and Xbox One on October 4th. And if you want to go check out the trailer for the remastered version, it's over there on YouTube. But yeah, I remember playing the game, and it is neat to have those voices connected in there. And obviously there's a lot of voice actors out there that could, portray all 4 of the characters. But to know that they're involved and actually kind of help write the script for the game to go through is pretty neat.
I don't think I ever played it, but again, just like we talk about these shows getting rebooted, any of this old properties that keep getting new life, I'm all for it.
Yeah. So go check that out. Well, moving along, it's been almost 10 years now since we lost Patrick Swayze at the young age of 57, and Paramount is debuting a new documentary titled I Am Patrick Swayze, featuring all new interviews with families and friends. I did happen to catch this. There's like a trailer out about the documentary. That's going to be coming to the Paramount Network channel on cable. That's August 18th. I don't know. There's several movies of his that just boom. I'm like instantly taken back to like the 80s and 90s, like Roadhouse and.
Oh yeah. Point Break.
Yeah. Like you were talking
Ghost.
about. Mm-hmm. lots of good ones back in the day from Patrick Swayze. You know, of course, Dirty Dancing probably at the top of the list. So, do you got a favorite of his?
Either Point Break or Roadhouse would be my favorite.
Yeah, it's just hard not to put Roadhouse at the top of the list. I don't know what it is about that movie. It's
I've
just,
probably seen Roadhouse more than any of his movies just because of the endless loop it was on TBS for years.
Me too. So, Swayze fans, you can go check that out August 18th there on the Paramount Network channel. And I guess since we're on kind of a downer note, we had some more sad news this past week. And this is right up your alley, Mick. Pro wrestling legend Harley Race. He was an 8-time NWA world champion. He passed away this past Thursday at the age of 76 after a battle with lung cancer. So I keep seeing this image going around from, is it a Survivor Series that has like 7 or 8 people in the picture, and they're all gone now. Like Andre, Rick Rude.
Yeah, that
Harley
would probably be
Race,
the Survivor Series picture.
Bobby Heenan. Yeah, I was like, wow, we're losing some of these legends in wrestling.
Yeah, Harley is, for old wrestling fans, I'm going back to the 80s, Harley is a big loss because he, like I said, 8-time world champion, and through the territorial days of the NWA, he was the flag bearer. He was, throughout the 70s and early 80s, the one who kept up the respect level of pro wrestling when it was under fire for being fake and this and that before they admitted to it being staged. He was the one that you would not want to go up to and tell that it was fake. From all accounts, from people in wrestling and stuff, he was a man's man. And a personal story about that, I met him in 2004, and he was having a lot of problems even back then with his health, and he couldn't stand very long. He actually rolled around in a wheelchair then. And I got to meet him, and he was sitting down, and I asked him, could I take a picture with him? I mean, he was out to eat, and he's like, yeah, we'll take a picture. And I crouched down beside him and gave somebody my camera, and he said, no. He said, ain't nobody going to take a picture of me sitting down.
Oh, wow.
He physically forced himself up doing like a push-up on the table and stood upright to take the picture, and then he went right back down.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
he was a man's man. But younger wrestling fans will probably more likely remember him as King Harley Race.
I was just going to say that. That's who I remember him most as, King Harley Race. And that was still back in the WWF days, right?
Right. He came in right after the Rock and Wrestling. He was there for kind of the big 80s wrestling climax.
Mm-hmm.
And he was at WrestleMania 3. He had a long run with Hulk Hogan. They done a Saturday night's main event match, and was on the earliest wrestling pay-per-views. And then he come back in the 90s to WCW, and he was with Big Van Vader at the time, feuding with Sting. And so he had a long history. And it's just through the late 90s, early 2000s, a ton of professional wrestlers died, but they were all more modern. And Harley is, probably one of the bigger names that we've seen pass away in the last decade.
Old school.
Very old school. Which there's a famous story about him. He was not a fan of Vince McMahon's version of professional wrestling in the 80s. And McMahon invaded his territory and was doing a show in his backyard. I think it was in Kansas City or St. Louis. And as they're all getting ready, somebody came to the back and said, hey, Harley's here and he's got a gun.
Wow.
And he was threatening to shoot people. And before he left, he set the WWF's ring on fire in the arena. This before the crowd came in.
Wow.
But then like 2 weeks later, he was back and he was ready to go to work for Vince. So, but just to show you how good Harley was, he could put a gun at Hulk Hogan and he could set Vince's ring on fire. And 2 weeks later, Vince would still give him a job. So,
that sounds like Steve Austin before Steve Austin, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just that attitude.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll move along from wrestling. We'll get into our beloved cartoons. Have you seen the Power of Grayskull documentary that was over there on Netflix?
I watched a good part of it, but I never finished it.
Well, that is getting a home video release here soon. You'll be able to purchase a digital copy or DVD if you still purchase DVDs. On September the 3rd, I did watch it. I thought it was really good. And between that and then the segment of the Toys That Made Us, man, there's some really good history in there about the Masters of the Universe collection.
Have you read the book called Mastering the Universe?
I don't typically read books unless they have pictures.
Okay, well, The Power of Grayskull. The Power of Grayskull documentary, most of its info came from the book Mastering the Universe,
Gotcha.
which was written by the original creators of He-Man. That's why I never finished watching the documentary, because I'm like, yeah, know that, knew that, know that, know that, and I just kind of lost interest. But it's out there for people to look for if you prefer reading versus watching,
Yeah. I picked
There's not
up
many pictures, though.
Oh, okay. I picked up the mini comic book that compiles all of the mini comics together, and that thing is like you could hurt somebody with that thing. And I still have not made it through that, but every once in a while I'll come down and pick it up and read some of those mini comic stories. It's pretty neat. Yeah, they've done the newspaper clippings, I think, too, like the comic strips.
That's what I was just going to say. As great as it is for the mini comics, it's all the other stuff they got the rights to and put in with it. The comic strips, like you were talking about, and a lot of the books on tape. The story books that came with cassette tape when you were a kid. Those are reprinted in that too. So it's got a lot of good material in it. Matter of fact, I may be wrong, but didn't we put that up as a recommended product? One of the first things we put as a recommended product on the site.
Could have been.
Yeah, people can go check that out on the site. It's only $20-some at Amazon now. It's over 500 pages. It weighs a good, what'd you say, 5 pounds?
Yeah,
it is massive.
They do have digital copies of it if you prefer it that way, just so you don't have to tote it around or something. But I don't know. Just having that in your hands sometimes, just comics in general. I read some online, but I would prefer having an actual book in front of me when I'm reading comics.
I'm the same way with comics. I buy the ones I can, but the comics I want to read that are out of my financial reach, then I do the digital copies. Yep. Yeah, because there's so much stuff from the Silver Age and things you want to read. You just can't afford to read the real thing. Very
true. Okay, moving right along, we got some Star Wars and Star Trek stories now. First up is we talked about, I think, on this show, that Star Wars home arcade machine from Arcade 1-Up. Well, they just announced and it is now out there that you can go pre-order from GameStop the Star Wars home arcade game. And it's about 5 feet tall now, so it's a little bit taller than the normal ones that they have. But your price tag is going to be a little bit higher, too. It's $500. But you've got the artwork from the original arcade machine. You've got the 17-inch screen, dual speakers. The marquee itself lights up, and you got that awesome flight yoke, from the old games. So it just looks glorious, just looking at the pictures. But like I said, you can go ahead and pre-order now at GameStop with the release coming on or about October 25th. And I'm assuming that's going to be at Walmart because Arcade 1-Up's been releasing all their machines to Walmart. So
yeah, call me an old fuddy-duddy, but I can't. I mean, it's great. It's coming out. I'm just skeptical. I can't imagine it. I want that cockpit to sit down in. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I might have to buy the game and then build the cockpit myself.
Well, it still would probably be cheaper than finding an actual cockpit machine somewhere and trying to.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Get it running again. But I know what you mean. I like that they've got that control. That yoke that you used to have on there. That's what really caught my eye, because you can play these emulators online, all day long from all these old arcade games, but having that actual feel that you remember in the arcades as a kid is, the game changer to me.
So you could set that up in a closet and get those glow-in-the-dark star stickers and put all around you and sit in there and play. Yeah, okay. Well, I might be all in on this now.
You could just get a blanket or something and get it to the backside of the machine and have it come up over your head and get a little chair. And you can do your little homemade cockpit there.
Yeah, that's okay. I might be all in on it now then.
When we went to that arcade up in Murfreesboro a couple years back, they had a Star Wars cockpit and a Spy Hunter cockpit side by side. So my son was playing Star Wars, I was playing Spy Hunter, and we could like look over at each other. I was like, oh man, this is like such a great experience. So that game is coming up for Star Wars, and then Star Trek, the motion picture. We've been talking about, all these movies coming back to the theaters through Fathom Events. Well, they're bringing that back to the theaters for its 40th on September 15th and 18th. And tickets are on sale now, so just check fathomevents.com for a theater near you if you want to go check out Star Trek the Motion Picture back in theaters in September.
God bless Fathom Events. When I my first experience with them was when they were going to do the 4 Batman movies, and I thought, well, that's a neat gimmick. But for them, it's not a gimmick, it don't seem like. Mm-mm. And they're bringing some much-loved movies back to theaters, and we talked about this last week, that I kind of refuse to go pay this cost of going to watch a movie in the theater for these new movies. But I'm okay with it for movies I've seen 100 times. So.
Well, I didn't see what all bonus content they're going to have with this, but I've been really surprised. We have an AMC and we have a Carmike in our range here. The AMC movies, they're so reasonably priced now, man. Like if you catch a matinee, it's like $5, no matter what day of the week, before like 5:00. And then on those days, if you want to like go to an IMAX showing, it's still like $8 or $9. Well, that's reasonable, man. That's not, you think about being in a larger city and they're probably paying $15, $20 to see a movie.
Well, here in our local area, if you wanted to go on at night, it's going to be $8 for the ticket. But it's the concession. It's everything that goes with it that's just so outrageous. Like now at this theater, the wife and kids go sometimes. If they were telling me that like a large popcorn and a large drink is like $14.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then you get candy on top of that. There's another $5, and then you spend $8 for the movie, and that's one person. You can't. It's hard to fathom for me, for a family of 4 of us, to go out to a movie night and enjoy snacks. Take in the whole experience. It's going to be $150. That's crazy.
It's nuts. And like our AMC does that bucket that you can bring back and refill, but you pay like $20 for it. And your refills are reduced. I think it's like $4.50 or something every time you bring it back. And that size normally I think is like whatever you said, 9 or 10 or maybe even more than that.
It's for popcorn.
For popcorn, yeah.
Come on.
How many bags of microwave popcorn can you get for $10?
I was gonna say, well, I mean, not even. We use an air popper here at home. I could get like 400,000 kernels for that kind of money. Pop them myself.
Oh man, we got an air popper too. I haven't used that in forever.
And at the same time, they wonder why movie attendance is on the decline. It ain't the movies, people. Yeah. It's the cost.
This is true. All right, we've got one more story, then we're going to get on to our anniversaries. Toy News International is reporting that Mattel will be releasing a toy line based on Top Gun. They've got the rights for the toys and also multiple categories, so like die-cast vehicles, play sets, games, whatever else they can think of to slap a Top Gun logo on, they'll be doing it. But they're bringing back like both the classic film aspect and then also the new sequel coming up. So that should be interesting to see what we can get. Maybe we'll get some like die-cast jets and everything that comes along with Top Gun. Maybe we'll get like we'll get the motorcycle and then a jet in one like pack. That's what I want. All
right. Well, I read when you sent me some of these news headlines was going to go over. I read that one and I made a little quick top 3 list of Top Gun toys I want.
Okay.
Number 1 on the list, I want a 3 3/4 inch size line of figures like G.I. Joe, and I want them to retool the Sky Striker to a modern Top Gun jet.
Oh, yeah.
That's number 1 on the list. Number 2 on the list, I want a set of Matchbox or Hot Wheels size, all the planes they can think of from all the movies and where they got their names on them, Ghost Rider and all that stuff. So give me a line of those, something that'll look nice on a shelf. And then I want some kind of Top Gun fighter jet model kits, some old school model kits it takes you a week to put together. That's what I want out of this. Anything else would be gravy, but that's what I want.
Yeah, I'm thinking like maybe a volleyball with the Top Gun logo on it. How about that?
Yes, and yes, that would be cool too.
Oh man, just
Oh,
go
and
ahead.
minifigures. They would sell
Minifigures.
good for me. I need some Top Gun minifigures.
Put it on the list, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, got to take
that's the
advantage
new
of that.
number one. That's the new number
Yeah,
one right there.
coming out next summer, so better get to work. All right, well, that's going to wrap the recurrent events. We've got a few anniversaries, and then we'll get on to our main discussion here. And this is pretty much why we wanted to do some video game talk this week. Is July 31st was the 30th anniversary for the North America release of Game Boy. So that we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk. But I never had a Game Boy.
Really?
Never had a Game Boy. Had many friends that would allow me to play a little Tetris or Dr. Mario, when I needed the little a little push, but never had a Game Boy.
Huh. Yeah, we'll get into it later, like you said. But when I seen that anniversary headline, it just didn't feel like it's been 30 years already. I mean, that's just such a big round number to say, oh, it's been 30 years.
Yeah. When I think of Game Boy, I think of Captain N, the Game Master. Do you remember watching that show?
Yeah,
and they brought in Game Boy in like season 2. I believe he was voiced by Frank Welker, Mr. Megatron and Fred from Scooby-Doo. But yeah, he had that just kind of, weird voice that went along with Game Boy. And I think anybody that goes back and watches it now is like annoyed by Game Boy. But I didn't like Game Boy. I didn't like Mother Brain in that series either. It was just like that over the top, always screaming and yelling at the other characters, and didn't really watch a lot of Captain N, the Game Master back in the day. All right, well then we've got a few movies to talk about. August 3rd is the 25th anniversary for Clear and Present Danger with Harrison Ford. How are you on the Jack Ryan movies?
After all this time, it's still on my watch list like Hard Rain was, but it's been on there longer than Hard Rain. So I've still got to get around to watching those. Yeah.
So you haven't seen Patriot Games, or
no?
Have you seen The Hunt for Red October?
Parts of it.
Okay. And what was the one with Ben Affleck? Some of All Fears. Haven't seen that one either.
I have all those downloaded. I'm just not never, like I told you at the beginning, I'm probably the busiest man you know. Okay. I have to specifically carve out time to do anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of Hunt for Red October. Obviously that was Alec Baldwin, wasn't Harrison Ford. But if you're going to watch one of the Harrison Ford ones, it's got to be Clear and Present Danger. It's like my favorite. It's down in Colombia, and it's got the Green Goblin. What the heck's his name? It's funny how you remember actors by what they were. Do you do that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
William Dafoe.
Yeah.
William Dafoe. Yeah, so you got Han Solo versus the Green Goblin.
Oh.
No. Actually, they're on the same team. Moving right along. August 5th is the 25th anniversary for Airheads.
Love that movie.
Oh, yes. I say Adam Sandler first, but that was more or less Brendan Fraser's movie than anybody's, right. I guess. But Steve Buscemi, oh my gosh. Love that movie.
I did too, and I had a old high school buddy of mine. This was after we were out of high school, though. We both loved that movie, and every time we seen each other, it was just one quote after another coming out. My man's going to gank you.
Yeah, and then I just rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and I tried out that watch feature on Facebook, and I totally spaced that Michael Richards was in that one too. Up in the air events with the Uzi, and oh my gosh, so many good, fun comedic actors in that.
And Lemmy from Motorhead was in it.
Right. Yep.
I played D&D too.
Yeah. I was a geek in high school. Oh my gosh. So great.
I love
so
that.
Great.
It's such a fun movie.
It is.
What was that line? Oh, it just left me. Adam Sandler had a great line in that. Oh, well, it's done passed me by now.
Oh, yeah. Buscemi fingering all the toys. He's got like that whole closet full of toys.
I know what it was when Adam Sandler's like, I ain't I ain't farting on no snare drum.
That should be a podcast right there. We'll just quote movie lines back and forth, man.
Hey, there you go.
We got to come up with a game. We got to come up with a game to do movie lines.
Oh yeah, something like Situation Jukebox, but movie quotes for situations.
I'll have to think on that one.
Yeah,
I'll have to think on
not a bad idea.
All right, and then August 6th, 20th anniversary for 3 movies: The Iron Giant, The Sixth Sense, and The Thomas Crown Affair. Which one of those kind of hit you out of that bunch?
Thomas Crown Affair, because it's the only one I've seen.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have seen The Sixth Sense probably once or twice. I was like, okay. You figure it out at the end, and it's okay. I don't know. Once it has a big twist at the end of a movie, it's hard to watch again. You know what I mean? Because you know what's going to happen, or you know the catch.
Well, I always like movies that have a twist ending. It don't have a lot of repeat value, but it is really good the second time you watch it because you're looking for all the little clues that you should have picked up the first time leading up to the twist. But after that, yeah.
I do that with, now, one that I will watch that's got that huge twist at the end is The Usual Suspects.
Don't reveal it. I've not watched it yet either.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We're going to have like a watch party on Facebook somehow with all the movies that Mick has never seen.
Yeah, I am. Let me look here. I am free for 2 hours on February 9th. I can pencil it in there. I got my calendar in front of me.
Forget all the Jack Ryan crap and go watch The Usual Suspects.
Kevin Spacey. Yeah.
Kevin Spacey. Yeah. Stephen Baldwin. The cast is awesome in that, and it's such a great story.
I'm just the type that when I have time to watch a movie, I choose to watch some old movie that I already know I like and try something new.
I do remember watching, I've watched Thomas Crown Affair a lot. I remember seeing that one in the theater, actually, with my wife. Really good movie. Pierce Brosnan. Dennis Leary is the one that makes that movie to me. He's freaking hilarious in that movie as the cop, trying to get in on the situation there with the stolen painting. But, oh, yeah, it's such a good movie.
Yeah, really
never
good.
Seen the original. And
yeah,
probably will not because I like that one too much.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our anniversaries. Coming up, we are going to talk about... Oh, yes.
Hey, I got a news story for you.
Okay, well, drop it, man.
So are you a fan of Arrow and Flash and all that on the CW?
That's on my to-watch list. Have not watched a single episode of either of those.
Well, being an old school comic book fan, I'm sure you know what Crisis on Infinite Earths is.
Oh, yes, I have seen the stories bouncing around about that, yes.
Yeah, so they're doing that over a 2 or 3 month run this fall in the Arrowverse. And where, for people who don't know, Crisis on Infinite Earths had different versions of these comic book characters from different dimensions all showing up in the same place. So they're doing that here too. And some guest stars that'll be appearing on the various shows are Brandon Routh from Superman Returns as that version of Superman. Mm-hmm. Tom Welling is coming back for his version from Smallville as Superman. John Cryer's coming back for his role of Lex Luthor from that. Burt Ward will be playing Robin.
That's the one that just blew my mind. That blew my mind.
Here's the one that blew my mind. Linda Carter is coming back as Wonder Woman.
No.
Yes, as part of this as well.
Oh my gosh.
So if you want to get some details, I'm speaking pretty much to you, Jason, but MeTV.com has a really good article on all the returning guests and stuff for this whole crossover event, this 2-month event they're going to be doing on the CW.
Okay, so it's going to be on CW, so it's not like a paid channel or streaming channel.
Well, the CW has, at least on my Roku device, they have a Roku app, and all their shows from each week are free. Cool. So, of course, they don't draw, if the show comes on Wednesday, you don't get it till Thursday, but that's no big deal. But yeah, so you could watch all those shows, Arrow and Flash and Supergirl and whatever else they have, and see all these cool crossovers and all these cool old actors playing these roles.
So, yeah, my curiosity was piqued at Burt Ward trying to fit in that Robin costume. And now it's even more piqued with Linda Carter getting back in the Wonder Woman costume.
Which it piques my interest for a whole nother reason, because in the Arrowverse, Linda Carter plays Olivia Marsden, who is the President of the United States. So how they'll explain how Wonder Woman and the President look so much alike may be interesting. But
interesting. Okay.
But anyway, I thought it was a cool idea. Every year they do some kind of week-long crossover, but this is pretty ambitious. So for comic book fans in general, and then for us old-school retro fans seeing these people coming back, it should be really, really cool. Yeah,
I had thought about adding that, and I just couldn't speak to it very much because I never got into those books or anything, so I'm glad you brought it up.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay. Well, now we'll go ahead and move on to our topical discussion coming up next on our video game consoles back in the day and Game Boy, whatever else we had. We're going to be talking about that, and then we'll be back with our final segment after that to wrap things up and talk to you about what's coming up on the Retro Network. So stay right there. Hey everyone, it is Jason back with the clip of the week, and with our discussion coming up on Nintendo, I found a news story from Inside Edition back in 1988 talking Nintendo and the craze that was Super Mario Brothers. Nearly 3 years, though, after the console had been released. So you'll hear in this story just how big the impact was of the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System back in the 80s. So here is this week's clip of the week.
This boy is doing more than just playing a video game. He has entered another world, a world of danger, intrigue, and magic. This is the world of the Super Mario Brothers. Put it on the screen, and where there was one kid, you'll soon find 2, or 3, or more. The game's protagonists, Mario and his nearly identical brother Luigi, are heroic. The Super Mario Brothers face each foe undaunted, time and time again. But who are these guys? Who are the Mario Brothers?
I don't know. The hockey players?
All I can think of is the guy in the library, Mario Puzi.
They're characters on Nintendo.
Have you ever heard of Nintendo?
No? Let's see.
I think it's something in Japanese.
Nintendo is something that started in Japan and has taken America by storm. In just 3 years, they've sold more than 11 million hardware units at about $100 each. They've got more gadgets, zappers, and gizmos than you can shake a joystick at, and about 80 different games you can buy to plug into the systems. So far, Nintendo has sold more than 50 million game cartridges. By the end of this year, they hope to have their system in 1 out of every 8 American homes. The game that comes with the hardware purchase is Super Mario Brothers. Mario and Luigi are Nintendo's superstar characters. In the games, they battle their way through a perilous maze of adventure and daring do. Out in the real world, their images adorn everything from sweatshirts to underwear. We found Nintendo America headquarters near Seattle. In true Inside Edition fashion, we had some tough questions we wanted answered. Now we have Mario and Luigi.
His brother.
They're the Mario Brothers.
That's right.
So are their names Mario and Luigi Mario?
No, it's just Mario and Luigi. There are no last names.
But why are they the Mario Brothers?
Some questions just have no answers.
There are answers inside Mario Mission Control, where games counselors take thousands of calls from players every day.
Okay, to get the magical sword, what you need is 12 heart containers.
Have you ever been to the mansion that has the eyeball in it?
These people play video games for a living. Consider that the Super Mario Brothers game has 8 worlds and 32 levels. kids and grown-ups can get fanatical about finding out the best way to get from point A to point B. It takes countless hours, weeks, and even months for some to get to the end of the game using trial and error and secret passages that aren't always detailed in the instruction books. No wonder the game borders on obsession for kids and adults. Sooner or later, you're going to need some tips from the pros. For instance, two of the bad guys are the Hammer Brothers, but you can outwit them.
When you're in level 3-1, there's going to be a spot about halfway through where you're going to run into the Hammer Brothers. Head to the right a little bit. There's going to be two sets of 3 bricks right on top of each other. Hit the brick on the right-hand side, and a beanstalk will appear. You'll end up in the Sky World, and you can collect a whole ton of coins. Stage 3-1. Towards the end of the stage, there's going to be a large staircase. Bypass the first turtle. On the second one, jump up towards the left-hand side of him, land on him, and continue to jump up and down. That's the way to get 99 free men on Super Mario Brothers and a whole lot of points.
Once again, I asked, who are Mario and Luigi? And this time I was told that they are us, the best of what's really inside each of us.
They're the nice guys, and the guys who are suddenly thrown into this fantasy world where they've got the ultimate challenge ahead of themselves. Can they rescue a princess? Can they save the world? And that's all of us.
This boy is doing more than just playing a video game. He has entered another world, a world of danger, intrigue, and magic. This is the world of the Super Mario Brothers. Put it on the screen, and where there was one kid, you'll soon find 2, or 3, or more. The game's protagonists, Mario and his nearly identical brother Luigi, are heroic. The Super Mario Brothers face each foe undaunted, time and time again. But who are these guys?
Who are the Mario Brothers?
I don't know. The hockey players?
All I can think of is the guy in the library, Mario Puzi.
They're characters on Nintendo.
Have you ever heard of Nintendo?
No? Let's see.
I think it's something in Japanese.
Nintendo is something that started in Japan and has taken America by storm. In just 3 years, they've sold more than 11 million hardware units at about $100 each. They've got more gadgets, zappers, and gizmos than you can shake a joystick at, and about 80 different games you can buy to plug into the systems. So far, Nintendo has sold more than 50 million game cartridges. By the end of this year, they hope to have their system in 1 out of every 8 American homes. The game that comes with the hardware purchase is Super Mario Brothers. Mario and Luigi are Nintendo's superstar characters. In the games, they battle their way through a perilous maze of adventure and daring do. Out in the real world, their images adorn everything from sweatshirts to underwear. We found Nintendo America headquarters near Seattle. In true Inside Edition fashion, we had some tough questions we wanted answered. Now we have Mario and Luigi.
His brother.
They're the Mario Brothers.
That's right.
So are their names Mario and Luigi Mario?
No, it's just Mario and Luigi. There are no last names.
But why are they the Mario Brothers?
Some questions just have no answers.
There are answers inside Mario Mission Control, where games counselors take thousands of calls from players every day.
Okay, to get the magical sword, what you need is 12 heart containers.
Have you ever been to the mansion that has the eyeball in it?
These people play video games for a living. Consider that the Super Mario Brothers game has 8 worlds and 32 levels. Kids and grown-ups can get fanatical about finding out the best way to get from point A to point B. It takes countless hours, weeks, and even months for some to get to the end of the game using trial and error and secret passages that aren't always detailed in the instruction books. No wonder the game borders on obsession for kids and adults. Sooner or later, you're going to need some tips from the pros. For instance, two of the bad guys are the Hammer Brothers, but you can outwit them.
When you're in level 3-1, there's going to be a spot about halfway through where you're going to run into the Hammer Brothers. Head to the right a little bit. There's going to be two sets of 3 bricks right on top of each other. Hit the brick on the right-hand side, and a beanstalk will appear. You'll end up in the sky world, and you can collect a whole ton of coins. Stage 3-1. Towards the end of the stage, there's going to be a large staircase. Bypass the first turtle. On the second one, jump up towards the left-hand side of him, land on him, and continue to jump up and down. That's the way to get 99 free men on Super Mario Brothers and a whole lot of points.
Once again, I asked, who are Mario and Luigi? And this time I was told that they are us, the best of what's really inside each of us.
They're the nice guys, and the guys who are suddenly thrown into this fantasy world where they've got the ultimate challenge ahead of themselves. Can they rescue a princess? Can they save the world? And that's all of us.
Okay, we are back for our topical discussion and building off the 30th anniversary of the release of Game Boy. We thought it would be fun to talk about our experiences growing up, getting our first home consoles and everything as far as video games go, trying to have that arcade experience at home. I guess let's just bouncing off the Game Boy there. I told you I didn't have one, never got one at that time. Did you get a Game Boy around that era when it came out?
Oh, yeah, I got a Game Boy. But starting back at the beginning, though, my brother had an Atari.
Yeah.
And I got to play Combat on it some and Pole Position on it some. But the original Nintendo, when it dropped, was somehow I was oblivious that Nintendo was a thing and on the market. I don't know how much hype it had. I wasn't aware until one day my uncle, and I've talked about this in an article on the Retro Network, but my uncle just sees me and he says, "Hey, you need to come over and play Super Mario Brothers with Tim." I was like, "What's Super Mario Brothers?" "Oh, it's Nintendo." "What's Nintendo?"
Oh, wow.
And the look I got from him was like, and I imagine here's a guy who's probably been pestered to death and spent all this money and, So anyway, I went over and we played Mario and I was kind of impressed. I wasn't impressed. And then the next day I went back and he had pro wrestling. And man, we played that game all day long. And from that point on, I was like, "Can I have a Nintendo? Can I have a Nintendo? Can I have a Nintendo? I need a Nintendo, want a Nintendo, want a Nintendo." And it's all I could talk about at school. And like all my friends had one. And I was like, I didn't even know this existed. But we went, I was kind of surprised too. I didn't even know I was getting one. We were going out to Bristol one night to do some stuff and ended up at Hill's department store. I don't know if you had Hill's.
Oh my gosh, you had Hill's.
Yes, we had Hill's.
Hill's is where the toys are, man.
Yeah.
We had Hill's in PA.
Well, we'll keep our Hill's thoughts down a little bit because that's a future topic discussion is old department store memories I want to go into. But anyway, we ended up at Hill's. And my dad is looking at Nintendo games. And I'm just kind of looking at them with him, and I'm drooling a puddle in the floor there. And he's looking at stuff, and he has the person come over, and he's like, "Oh, I want this game and this game." And I'm thinking, "For what? What do you want Nintendo games for?" And then he told him he also needed the Nintendo. I think I put a hole in their roof. I jumped so high. And...
so it was just like a random situation? It wasn't like a birthday or anything?
Yeah, just a random situation. And, my dad's business, the way it was, being self-employed, he had really good swings and he had a lot of downtimes. And sometimes after a long period of downtime, he would, in his mind, try to make up to you some of the things you missed out on for 6 months or whatever. And maybe this was one of those times. I'm not sure. But, yeah, he just bought a Nintendo. But unfortunately, my first Nintendo was not the classic one that most people got. Mine did not come with Super Mario Brothers or Duck Hunt or the gun. It didn't have any of that. It was just a system and 2 controllers and a big tease. It had a huge book picturing all the games they had out at the time, multi-page spreads on each game. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I got the book, but not the games. That's great. So, but he did buy me pro wrestling, which I'd been dying over, and a little known game called Alpha Mission, which nobody's probably ever heard of, but it was actually one of my favorite games for the console. It's, I don't know, you're in a spaceship. It kind of looks like the one you're in Galaga, but it's like a much more in-depth playing through the levels and stuff. It's really, really fun. But So yeah, I got my first Nintendo kind of on a whim when I was totally not expecting it.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, see, I mean, everybody I talk to, I begged for it for Christmas. I circled it in the Sears wish book, and I got it on Christmas. My story is a little bit different. I'll back up a little bit to get us back to then the Nintendo era. I got an Atari 2600 probably when I was about 7 or 8. And I had mainly the Activision games. So I remember it came with like Combat and whatever the standard was. But all the Activision games like Pitfall, the Grand Prix, what else? There was a Freeway, which was like a version of Frogger with a chicken.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only game my dad would play with me. He did not like the games at all, but he could get in there and all you're doing is just pushing up. You don't go side to side. So you got this little chicken and you're avoiding all the traffic. There's like, I don't know, 20 lanes of traffic and you're just trying to get to the top. And whoever gets to the top most times is the winner at the end. And it was like a timed race, but he would play that with me. But I had an Atari, and that was more of a rainy day kind of thing. I was outside more, man. There really wasn't an Atari game that held my attention long enough to play more than, probably 30 minutes at a time. And I was back outside. And again, it's probably the technology and the development of that. And I did have Pac-Man, so that might tell you a little bit there too. Everybody poops on the Atari version of Pac-Man, which it wasn't bad. I mean, it was all right, but there was none that I had that really kept my attention. Probably I had the Superman game, and that was one where you had to go and change into Superman and fly here and fly there and rescue people. So it was a little more involved, but most of mine were just kind of mindless little things. Barnstorming, where you had the plane and you're driving through the barns. Had that one. Stampede was another one where you're the cowboy roping the cattle. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, all those were just kind of real simple, games.
Did you not have a Nintendo?
So here's getting back to that era now. I remember being in, I believe it was Hills in State College, PA. That was about 45 minutes from where I was from. I needed to drive, like 20 minutes to get to like a Montgomery Ward or someplace that had like games and stuff. But if we drove to State College, then there was a bunch of stores there. We'd always go to Hills. And Hills had a setup side by side with the NES and the Sega Master System. And so I remember being in that store and there being a line down the aisle to try and play Super Mario Brothers because that was hooked up. And then I can't remember what the game was for the Sega. Nobody wanted to play the Sega. So I went, of course, I went up there. I'm trying to remember which game it was. If it was like Alex Kidd or maybe it was one of the sports games or something. I didn't mind it at all. I loved it. And it had the 3D glasses and the zapper gun. So both came with the gun, but the Sega also, you had the version that had the 3D glasses and you could play. Maybe that was what it was set up to. You played this one called Missile Defense, and you just got all these missiles kind of coming at the screen, and you're shooting it with the zapper gun. Oh, I loved it. So I asked for a Sega Master System instead of a Nintendo. And it could have been because I knew a couple of friends that had a Nintendo, and I just wanted to be different, So I got the Sega Master System. It was probably Christmas, maybe around 86 or 87 in there. And my 3D glasses went out within like the first 3 months of having it. One of the lenses wouldn't flicker, so I had 1.5D on my Missile Defense and Zaxxon. I had Zaxxon 3D, but I was into all the games too. They were all great. There was great basketball, great football, great baseball. They had a pro wrestling game which I played, which was fun. I had Alf, which was a nightmare to play. It was like this puzzle you had to solve. You had to go and you had to get this salami out of the refrigerator, and then you got to go to this cave and use the salami to beat these bats down, and you got to find this piece of the spaceship. And it was just impossible to figure out without I don't think they had a Nintendo Power like magazine for Sega. They might have, but I didn't have it. So I had that. My favorite though was always Outrun. I played so much Outrun on that console, and there's different ways you could go in Outrun to get to the end stage. So you had you could take a left and keep going left, or you could take a left and a right and a left and get to the end. So you had different stages you could get through, and I tried to do all of those. But yeah, man, I was the Sega Master System guy.
You were one of those guys.
Yeah, up until I bought myself a Nintendo probably around 1990 or 91. That was the first time I owned an NES. And that was at the local trading shop. I bought one.
I don't know about your experiences, but here in our area, it was like when video game systems come on the market, it created a multi-class system at school. So you were a Nintendo guy or you were a Sega guy. And I'm not kidding, the Nintendo kids sat together at lunch and the Sega kids sat together at lunch, and you would kind of get into these arguments about which was better, and even though one had never really played the other, so we didn't really know what we were arguing about. But so I was on the Nintendo side of things, and of course you gravitated towards other Nintendo owners because those are the ones you could trade games with. I couldn't trade and get Outrun from you to play on my Nintendo. It just didn't work. So maybe it was just us, I don't know, but we always looked down at Sega owners.
Well, I didn't know anybody else that had a Sega. So it was when I was staying overnight at my friend's house or whatever, or hanging out with them, that's when I was getting my Nintendo fix. And I remember going up the street to play Skate or Die with my friend Tim, and we played hours and hours of Skate or Die. And then just some of the other Tecmo Bowl and, some of the other big ones. And that was enough for me. And then he would come down and play Sega with me. And we would usually do the sports games back and forth. Double Dribble. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love Double Dribble too.
Yeah, me too.
I remember playing a lot of that. But yeah, so I stuck in the Sega world. I got a Genesis before I got an NES.
And I was just going to ask, what did you go to after the Master System? Was it Genesis or SNES?
Yeah, so it was from the Master System, I went to Genesis, and then I bought that Nintendo secondhand because we had a little trading outpost right next to the movie theater, and you could go in there and trade games. He would have a whole slew of NES games. He had a few that were Sega, but if you had the sleeve and the instruction book, you could trade in a game for $1. So I just traded like crazy. I would play through a game and then go back and trade it. And if you had the book and you wanted to trade for a game that didn't have the book, you could get it for nothing. Wow. So it was like this whole system. I don't know how the dude made any money, but I did end up buying a Nintendo from him just so I could start playing my own games and some of the ones I'd never played before. Yeah.
He was probably selling weed out the back door to all the other video game kids. That was just a front.
I think it was video games and jewelry. So he probably made more off the jewelry side of the store. But yeah, that was my experience to get into trading games because I didn't really, like I said, I was the Sega guy and all my friends were Nintendo, so I couldn't trade with anybody either except for that dude downtown. So here comes that kid again, another $1 to trade in a game.
When he gets a little older, I'll see if he needs a flashy pinky ring.
Yeah, I mean it was almost like a rental place if you think about it. Renting the game until you beat it and go on to the next one. But yeah, I went straight for the Genesis.
How old were you when you got your Genesis?
So
still in elementary school or high school or
it was
middle school?
It would have been early high school years, so probably 9th grade. So I think it came out in 89 or 90. So it was right in there when I got the Genesis. And I remember staying up all night. This is later on, probably when I was a sophomore, junior. I'd go over to my buddy's house and he had Bulls versus Lakers on Sega Genesis. And we would stay up all night playing through an entire season and playoffs. And Sonic, when Sonic 2 hit, yeah, we were all trying to beat that thing. I mean, it was like, probably what Super Mario Brothers 3 was when that came out. That was just huge. I remember being at a friend's birthday party, and he got Super Mario Brothers 3. It was like brand new then, it just had came out. And we were just happy and enthralled just to watch him play. We all, of course, wanted to play, but we're like, oh my God, he can fly. He's got this, raccoon tail, and he's got the frog suit. He's got that thing that turns him into a statue, and you got all these little puzzle games and the warp whistle. You got to go get the warp whistle. And oh my gosh, we were just so enthralled. It was like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, 15 kids watching somebody play a video game like that. And I mean, you should probably have those experiences in the arcade back in the day, just hovering over games, watching people try to beat them. But oh my gosh, when Super Mario Bros. 3 hit, it was crazy.
Oh yeah, I was swept up in it, and that was a game that I knew was coming out, and I'd saved my allowance up to where I had the money on hand when it came out. I probably got it first or second week, whenever I could get to the store. But I got, I stuck with Nintendo, so I had, my next gen was Super Nintendo. And we got I think it was our Kmart, had a Super Nintendo set up in the fall playing Super Mario World. And much like you're talking about watching that kid play Super Mario Brothers 3, you'd go to Kmart while Mom was walking around shopping, and you're watching other people play Super Mario World, and you just can't believe it. Like, man, this looks fantastic. Look at all this.
Yes, I can jump on Yoshi and use his tongue, and
yeah. And so I got plenty of time to play it too, and that hooked me. I'm like, I want a Super Nintendo. And my dad's answer was, "You've already got a Nintendo." I'm like, well, wait, Dad. This is different. This is a Super Nintendo.
Super.
And he's like, "You've already got a video game. I'm not buying another video game." And I'm begging for it for Christmas. So this is 91. I'm 13. It come out in 91, right? Am I right on that? I believe it did.
Sounds about right.
So I'm begging for it. And every time we're in Kmart, I'm going over there to play it, and he comes over and watches me play it, and he just walks on. He's got no interest. And I'm like, well, it's like Ralphie and the BB gun. I just kept getting shot down, and it was coming up on Christmas, and my brother, we'd went out Christmas shopping for Mom and Dad, and he had let me ride with him, and we're driving back, and he said, "So what do you want for Christmas?" I was like, "Well, a Super Nintendo. I've been telling him I want a Super Nintendo." And he just said, "Let me tell you, you've already got a game system. You're not getting a Super Nintendo." And to make matters worse, I didn't realize it because we were kind of doing our own shopping. We got home. He pulls out a brand new Super Nintendo that he bought for himself 2 weeks before Christmas. And he sets it up, and I'm like, "I want to play it." And he's like, "Well, let me get used to it first." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So he's playing his Super Nintendo. And he bought the Super Scope 6 for it and stuff. And
oh, man.
And so I'm just dying inside. And then I mentioned again, I want a Super Nintendo for Christmas. And my dad's like, "Just play your brothers." But on Christmas morning, one of the first presents I open is a Super Nintendo game.
Oh, nice.
And Mom's like, "Oh, shoot, I put the wrong name on that. That's your brother's." I'm like, "Oh." And then my brother opens a Super Nintendo game, and I just know. And sure enough, I had a Super Nintendo, and that story that I already had a Nintendo, my brother and my folks had conspired to be that was going to be their answer anytime I mentioned it.
Oh man!
Because they had it for like 2 months already.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So yeah, I got Super Nintendo, and my brother's 8 years older than me, and he used to get so aggravated. His best friends would come over, and my brother, he owned his Super Nintendo, but he rarely played it. He wasn't into video games, but his friends were. So they'd come over to hang out with him, and it wouldn't be 15, 20 minutes. All his friends are in my room. We're playing Street Fighter 2 and Super Contra and Super Star Wars. And he's like, "I don't know why y'all are hanging out with him. He's just a kid," going on and on and on. But
he's got the cool games.
That's right. They would come, his friends, like on Friday nights going to the high school football game. "Hey, can I go with you to the game?" "No." And he'd leave. Well, here would come one of his friends like 15 minutes later. "Hey, you want to go to the game?" And they'd pick me up and we'd show up. My brother would be mad. He'd be, are we going out to eat after this? And they're like, no, we're going back to play Street Fighter with Nick. And we'd stay up all night on Friday nights playing round robin Street Fighter. So I loved my Super Nintendo. And when I got into the emulators online, I actually downloaded it before I downloaded the Nintendo emulator. And later on, I loved all the normal games on Super Nintendo, but later on I got into the sports games, the John Madden franchise, and from there I never looked back. It's mostly sports games after that. But yeah, so I had some interesting times trying to acquire the Super Nintendo.
That's great. Super Nintendo did not connect with me at all. I remember going over to a friend's house and playing Super Mario World, and then I had that one experience at college where me and two of my roommates across the hall there, I went over to their place and we stayed up trying to play and beat Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back, and Super Return of the Jedi all in one night. That was like my only experience with Super Nintendo. But I did find some like friends of mine, actually one of my first girlfriends had a Genesis. I remember going over to her house, and her and her sisters and a couple other guys are there, and we're all playing Mortal Kombat, and she got totally pissed at me. I was such a novice. Like, this was like the first time I ever played Mortal Kombat, and I'm just pressing buttons, man, and I'm beating the crap out of her character, you know, and she's like, how are you doing this? And I figured out like some kind of, you get to the fatality and you just start pressing buttons because you don't know what's what. And I end up doing like some fatalities and stuff. She's like, how are you doing this? She got so pissed at me. But I connected with a friend of mine in college around 96, which would have been my freshman year. He had a Genesis. And so we wasted so much time playing seasons of NHL 94 on Genesis. And I brought all my games and stuff. And then there was this like little, it wasn't really a dollar store, but it was like a mom and pop little department store in town. And they sold like old Nintendo games and stuff. And I bought a brand new in-box copy of Star Wars for NES. I wish I would have left it in the box, but I didn't. And we went through and played that game on my Nintendo, which at the time did not have a top cover because the games would get stuck and I couldn't get them out. So I had to rip the cover off to get the games out. Man, it was just fun because there was like I remember buying a couple Nintendo games like that were brand new, like years after they had been released in college, and taking them back to the room and playing with my roommate next door. So yeah, Super Nintendo did not connect with me at all, and I pretty much stopped after Genesis until like probably PlayStation 2 was my next console. Didn't have, some kids I knew or some friends I knew in college had, what was it, Sega Saturn and PlayStation, I think, were the ones when those came out were kind of back and forth at each other. And was it up to the Cube then or N64 anyway?
Yeah, 64, I guess.
I remember.
And I think GameCube come out with what, PS2 era.
Okay. I remember playing, I think it was NBA Live 95 on this, I think it was Sega Saturn or something like that at a friend's house. And I was kind of blown away at that point. But I didn't buy another console till after I was out of college and married, and I got a PlayStation 2 then, but now we're up to Xbox One. We got the Xbox One we use with the boys. So where are you at now? Did you get through that era past Super Nintendo at all?
I was in my college years. I picked up an original PlayStation. And then I didn't have a PS2 for a long time because I got married, but my buddy had one and he was at our house constantly because he went to college. The local college was 1.5 miles and he was younger than I was, and he just would stay with us like 3 nights a week just because it was closer, and he would have lunch from school and breaks between classes, he would just come to the house. He had a house key, and he'd come here and eat lunch. So he left his PS2 at my house for years, and so I had access to it. And,
Nice.
but in between all that, the whole thing, it brought this discussion on Game Boy. You said you never had a Game Boy, right?
No, I was big into those like Radio Shack LCD games, like Tiger Electronics, all those that you could they were just like the black LCD screens, and you could, based on whatever property it was that game. And it was just basic motions like back and forth or up and down. I had one that was like this plane and tank game where you try to get the tank across and the plane was trying to drop bombs on you. Real basic stuff. I also had the pride of my portable collection was the Donkey Kong mini arcade, like the tabletop arcade that Coleco made. I had that, and my neighborhood friend Tim had Pac-Man, and I can remember putting those two games side by side, and we would play those back and forth and then switch them around, and I would play Pac-Man, he would play Donkey Kong for a while. So that was like the king. They took like 4D batteries to power that thing. So, or maybe it was C, I don't know, but it seemed like it was I know it was the bigger batteries to make that thing work. But yeah, I was always about those little games. I had a little Burger Time. I remember that was a LCD game, and I played those in the car on our trips that were 2 hours up to see my grandparents back and forth. Well, not at nighttime. You couldn't play those at nighttime. That was the bad thing about those compared to Game Boy. But
right. Game Boy you couldn't play at night either. Game Boy didn't have a backlight to it. Not the originals.
Okay. I thought maybe I'm thinking of that. Whatever. Wasn't there something you could like put over top of it to make it bigger or something?
Yeah,
what was that called?
I don't remember what it was called, but it was a monstrosity. It would clip onto the top. And it had an arm. It came over with this screen, and on the back of the screen had these two little light bulbs, and it would shine on your screen. It still wasn't very effective, but it would also like magnify the screen, which distorted stuff, and it was horrible. I got it, but I rarely used it.
Yikes.
But I had, again, I always usually had to save my allowance for a lot of stuff, and I knew Game Boy was coming, and it was portable Nintendo. And I saved up my allowance and went and got, and I'm going to bring up a third department store, Rose's department store.
Oh, yeah.
They had a Game Boy console from Nintendo set up. I don't know if you've seen these in stores back then, but this was this whole big gray plastic console that looked like a Game Boy that had a Game Boy built into it.
Huh. I don't remember that at all.
You couldn't grip it like from behind and use your thumbs. You had to use your forefingers, even on the directional pad, to play it. But I would go in there, and they had it wired up for Tetris, and I would just wear Tetris out. And I already had Tetris for Nintendo. And so here I've got Tetris now on Game Boy. But I bought my own Game Boy. And Tetris was the game that made two-player Game Boy games possible. They used to have what we call now like a USB cord that you attached between Game Boys to link them together to play. And on one trip in 92, it's 92, we had Game Boys. My cousin Tim and I, we went out west, and we both had Game Boys, and we took them with us. And this was a 2-week car trip, and we would sit in the back and hook up and play Tetris until the batteries died. And, of course, you had just AA batteries that went in these things back then. And, that was a lot of fun. It kept us quiet. It had an earphone port, I believe, in them. And we'd wear headphones and play Game Boy. I love my Game Boy, but I had Tetris. I had this other game called the Dalian Opus. It was like a puzzle game. It was kind of fun. And I don't know what the name of the baseball game. I know it had Cecil Fielder on it. Maybe it was Cecil Fielder Baseball. But that's the only games I ever had. No, I take it back. I had the Mario game for it too, but I didn't care much for it. Super Mario Land or something like that.
Uh-huh. But the Handy Boy looks like what the accessory that put on top of it. Yep.
The Handy Boy.
Yep. Yikes. I can tell you that probably about 3 years ago, we were over at some friend's house and we all did Dirty Santa. and I got a Game Boy Advance out of the deal.
Wow.
So it wasn't really a dirty Santa at all. But yeah, he like found it in his attic and wrapped it up. And I think we have like maybe 10 games, something like that. And there's a local thrift store that has used games for sale. And we've gone down and purchased a couple Game Boy Advance games, Donkey Kong, and he was big into Pokemon. I think there's like a Pokemon pinball or something. Anyway, yeah, so I get that like experience now of all times. My son will break that out on the trips every once in a while and play some Game Boy. Super Mario 3's on there, and yeah, he's got a bunch of them.
You can Google Game Boy store display, and you can see the display I was talking about. And I mean, this had a TV screen built into it and everything. So Nintendo pumped some money into rolling out the Game Boy to send those out to stores. Maybe the stores had to buy them. I don't know, but
yeah,
it was really nice. But as of the three systems, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy, I probably played more hours on Nintendo, and I probably enjoyed Super Nintendo the most out of the three of them, though.
I would say probably Genesis is my favorite, and I probably put more hours into that. The Master System too. I mean, they were probably neck and neck, but the Genesis mainly was my thing back in the day.
You may have had a friend like this too, but I had a friend named Jeffrey that had every system all the time. And you'd go over and spend the night at his house, and he would want to play Sega Genesis, which on one hand was cool because I didn't have a Genesis. But on the other hand, it sucked because the only reason he wanted to play Genesis was because you were not used to playing Genesis, and he could whip your ass at whatever you were playing.
Exactly.
And we'd get into arguments. I'm like, oh, yeah, plug up Super Nintendo and we'll see.
Yeah.
You know.
That was probably why my girlfriend invited me over that one day just to kick my ass in Mortal Kombat, and it backfired on her.
Maybe.
Oh, man. Well, this is fun, man. Talking about our old systems. And yes, we are definitely going to circle back to Hill's department store. Holy crap.
Yes.
Because
all department stores. Yes.
Oh, my gosh. Hill's. We had an Ames that was just a stone's throw away from where I grew up. Kmart. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Montgomery Ward. Loved all those old department stores.
I could sit and talk and tell stories for a couple hours on just department stores. So we'll definitely have to tackle that at some point.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Well, we'll wrap up our topical discussion this week, and we'll come back and wrap things up for the week. So stay right there.
They said it wasn't humanly possible. But now you can have all the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
All right, we are back to wrap things up for the week. And Mick, you want to tell everybody about what's coming up on the Retro Network?
Of course, but as always, we'll talk about what was up last week. So last week you had that video, what a Pennsylvania county fair looked like in 1990. Mm-hmm. I've watched part of that. I haven't got to watch all of it yet.
Yeah, had some good feedback. I also posted it. Me and my buddy Wyatt run a hometown like Facebook page for our area and put it up on there, and a lot of people were commenting on it there. Remembering the good old days of the fair. Oh, I wish the fair was still like this, that kind of a thing. So that was a fun video.
Kevin had a piece on the broad end it all. We talked about on the pod last week too, the big MTV WWF conglomeration show that set all kinds of records for MTV. I had up, of course, I teased 3 different pieces last week and didn't deliver on any of them. But they're all still in process. You know,
you did post one. What did you post?
Well, I posted something, but it wasn't one of the 3 I had pimped on the show. But it was looking back at some TV shows that a lot of people have completely forgotten. A few of us have almost forgot. Just a fun looking back at some old TV shows. And then Eric had Def Leppard music video Spotlight. And we'll kick off looking at this coming week by talking about Eric and music. he is starting something new he had told you and I about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. Thursday Threesome be the first one this week, where he goes in depth on 3 music videos and songs that seemingly have nothing in common, but when you get down to it, they actually do. So I'm interested to see what he comes up with to begin with on that.
Yeah, I am too.
Adam this week has a movie review of Grunt, the wrestling movie, which is the cheesiest, campiest, yet most glorious 80s B movie I've ever watched in my life. It's the story of Mad Dog Joe DiCurso, who accidentally kills an opponent in the ring and retires and kind of goes off to be a hermit to deal with his shame. And a few years later, this guy wearing a mask called The Mask, who uses all of Mad Dog's moves, hits the scene and is winning everything. And it's all building up to a big title battle royal. There's all these conspiracy theories that Joe is The Mask, and they're going back to all these people's, like his high school wrestling coach going, yeah, I taught him that move. He's The Mask. It is so fun.
How old is this movie?
85.
Okay.
Maybe. Somewhere in that range. Last I checked, the entire thing was on YouTube.
Nice.
Grunt, the wrestling
That's all
movie.
I need
Anyway,
to know.
And Adam, with his take on things, is always great, and putting it onto this is wonderful.
I'm in the wrestling mood. I went back. I started the Glow series all over again last night, so I'm in the wrestling mood. I'm going to go watch that this week.
Well, I'm typing this into YouTube as I talk to see if it's on there. There's a 2-minute clip. Actually, and you just brought up Glow. There is a scene in Grunt that features the ladies of Glow.
Nice.
So you know, yeah. I'm not seeing the whole movie on here anymore, which is a real shame. Actually, in my retro museum, I still have my copy of the original VHS tape that I bought from a closed down video store years and years and years ago. Anywho, there's a movie trailer on there that's worth watching and a few funny scenes. But moving on, Brandon's back with another retro rerun review. This time of the show, Can't Hurry Love from the early 2000s, starring a younger Mariska Hargitay. So before Law and Order and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A show I didn't know existed, but he makes me want to check it out and give it a shot. And I am doing a piece this week on the most dangerous toy of all time, lawn darts. Take people way back in time.
There we go. Yep.
And then on Friday, we're putting up another retro roundtable. Who were we crushing on way back in the day when we were younger? So that should be interesting.
Yeah, and then we've got, as far as podcast goes, we've got the Sequel Quest Hobbs and Shaw review coming up on Friday this week. So be on the lookout for that in the podcast feed. And I'm itching to get back in the Situation Jukebox studio and get one of those together soon. We tried to get one together this past week when Mick had a night off, but didn't quite work out.
Well, I know what that is. That was just fear. That was no other reason. I read all of the excuses. That's all they were excuses.
Well, we will try to get you on one of those shows at some point. We've got to do that. Maybe on a Sunday night or something, we can get you to do Situation Jukebox with us. So, and then, just as I mentioned earlier, go out to Patreon this week and make sure you're in that $2 level, and we're going to get you some new podcasts and content over there to enjoy, along with everything else you get with the Retro Network. So, we got anything else we want to do before we get on out of here?
I got one more quote from Airheads.
Go for it.
When the station DJ says, "What's your band name?" We're the Lone Rangers.
Lone Rangers. You're not exactly lone.
There's 3 of you. You're not lone. Just play the tape, man.
Yes. Oh,
when somebody has a gun to your head, you say and do whatever they want you to do.
I love it when they come up with the list of demands, and it's like a football helmet full of sour cream or naked photos of B. Arthur.
Yeah.
And then they show up. I can't remember who it is that kind of, ooh, okay.
That was Steve Buscema. Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
He's like, nice.
Oh, and then the person that cracks me up probably the most, and he's only in it for a little bit, is Chris Farley as the cop,
Oh, yeah.
He goes in there and, when he's looking for the girlfriend, what are you going to do now? And he pulls those nipple rings off the guy. Improvise. Yeah.
And the fact they had those, and I had them as a kid, those electronic mechanized Uzi water guns.
Yep.
But he was putting hot sauce in them to
sauce,
spray people in the eyes.
Yeah, they get their demands in. They get some burritos, and he's just like squirting it on the burrito there at that one scene. That was great.
Yeah. Everybody go watch Airheads. That's your assignment this week.
Heck, I'll watch it again. I just watched it a couple weeks ago, but anytime that comes on, man, yep, I'm there. All right, well, everybody have a great week. Make sure you go out and follow us on social media, TRN Social, and at Recurrent Events for your news headlines. And then you can follow our personal accounts at Yesterdayville for Mick and at RD80s for me. And, man, as always, this is fun, man.
It is always so much fun. Highlight of my week.
Yeah, I'm going to go try to find some old Ames department store ads and stuff this week, post up. Hills. You remember Hills? Wow.
I have, this. I have a big Sunday dinner every week, and we sit down and record this, and that's always my dessert on Sunday afternoon. So I always really enjoy this.
Yep, it's great. All right, we'll sign off for now. Everybody go out and check out the Retro Network this week and our podcast channel, and we'll talk to you next week. Have a good one, Mick.
See you, man.
Thanks for listening to the Retro Network Podcast channel. Make sure you listen to all of the great podcasts we have to offer right here in this feed. If you enjoy our channel, please give us a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast app. Connect with us on social media by following TRN Social and visit the retronetwork.com website for your daily retro fix. Come back next week for another episode of the Retro Network Podcast.